Eric, let's get into it. It's great to meet you, sir. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Of course. Thank you, Joe. It's a pleasure to be on with you. Yeah.
So before we get into the company, before we get into your latest venture, I want to know 5 years ago, the landscape of everything changed because of COVID and it was
Mm.
raging, especially in music. Schedules melted away, PR, everything was affected. Ultimately, tell me where you were at that time, how you survived the pandemic, and how it ultimately motivated you to get to this point now where you have this new venture and what you're doing today.
It's a great question. I frequently think back to that moment because it was so surreal. And of course, we all have our own story and own experience. But I was actually living in North Carolina at the time. I was running Duke University's performing arts series and presenting series, Duke performances. Um, and my wife and I'm from New York originally. My wife and I had actually pre-COVID been planning to come back home to New York. And then the pandemic hit. And then I thought, what am I doing? I'm leaving this gig, as everyone's trying to hold on to their jobs. Um, but it ultimately was the right choice for us. And I had been at Duke for a long time, and I'm an alum as well. But it was time to come home, and we moved back in August of 2020, so in right in the thick of it. And as everyone was fleeing New York City, we were coming in.
Yeah.
And I started a new job at Harlem Stage, Performing Arts Center here in the city that has a 40-year history of commissioning, presenting, and education. So it was really near and dear to all the things that I love and do. Um, but man, I remember those days both at Duke and at Harlem Stage where all of our physical shows went out the window. We all overnight became film producers, trying to figure out how to produce live streams and performances that artists were recording either from their living rooms, or we were putting them into studios and in safe environments all over the world and sending us those videos to present. So it was a it was a surreal time.
Yeah.
Um, and then when we reopened, we also became experts in uh, just keeping folks safe and trying to encourage audiences to come back and to show them we were being really um, really disciplined in not just reopening our venues, but making sure that we were attentive to them and their safety and their health. And look, we're not still back to pre-pandemic attendance. Yes, I've seen reports of the commercial side of the business, the big shows, the Beyoncés, that sort of thing, certainly selling those tickets like gangbusters. But in terms of the jazz world, the performing arts world, we're still below where we were pre-pandemic. So uh, I'm really fascinated in and this motivated partly my decision to start my company, Eric Oberstein Productions. How do we create sustainable models to continue to nurture this art form and the arts in general? I joke that I've chosen to work in the world of subsidized art. Not to say that I don't love the idea of making lots of money exclusively from record sales and touring gigs, but especially in jazz, artists they're in it for the art. And yes, there are a select few that can make their money exclusively from those traditional revenue sources, the gigs, the records, that sort of thing. But everyone else is really being really creative in how they piece it together through grants, through teaching, through other sources of income that they develop for themselves. So I've always been a partner to those artists trying to figure it out, and
Yeah.
really artists of stature. These are not artists who are are just phoning it in. These are artists that are at the top of the field. But we still need to be creative because the music business it really was not built to support artists in the ways that they need to be supported now. So we're trying to rethink the paradigm in many ways.
So obviously, we have to make money, we have to survive, we have dreams we want to fulfill, but you saying that part about the jazz community and musicians in this community doing it for the pure love of the art. Now, they need to make a living too, but having that as kind of the overall feeling of this community, doesn't that make it d- d- does that make it more inviting for you as a business owner representing this community to give you a little bit more gusto to help them get to that point where they can creatively make ends meet?
Yeah, I mean, I feel really encouraged. I mean, before starting my company, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just another person throwing my name in the ring. I wanted to make sure that I was differentiating myself and just through my experience and what I offer, making sure that it was sort of a different model that I could offer to artists. And I've been fortunate to have some long-standing partnerships with some of the leading artists out there. Folks like Daphne Prieto and Arturo Farrell, you know, respectively 9 and 8 year, these are almost decade-long relationships. I have a great deal of pride in the work that I've done with artists like that, and have been fortunate to commission and present and partner with other artists in different ways. Um, but for me, it's yes, absolutely an understanding of the traditional side of the business, the record labels, the festivals, the touring circuits, all that good stuff. But I also bring really 15 years running arts organizations and working as an arts presenter as well. So I've sat both on the artist side, but also on the presenter side. I've learned how to raise money, how to navigate the funding landscape. I have a deep love for arts education, and I teach myself arts management. So I like to think that while I call all these folks that we love, our colleagues, that just because of the roads that I've been fortunate to walk, I bring maybe a slightly different perspective. It's 1 foot in the for-profit side of the business, 1 foot in the nonprofit side of the business, um, and a reminder for all of us that nonprofit doesn't mean no money.
Right.
It just means that any profit that we make, we reinvest back into our mission and into our work. So. Um, yeah, I'm excited by what I can offer that maybe gives artists a different way of thinking about how to build their careers. That it isn't just, well, you have A, B, and C options and that's it. It's really, let's look at the whole universe of opportunities out there for you to make a living. And at the end of the day, that is part of my job, working as an artist manager and as a collaborator, to say, hey, what you do artistically is culture changing. I say that these artists, they are doing something for our art form that is so unique, and that's really why I'm drawn to work with them. That they're changing the art form. Their vision is incredible. The collaborations that they're doing are amazing, and they're really building they're building houses to invite more folks in, as opposed to saying, well, I'm just doing this thing that we've done 50 years ago. It's, hey, what are you doing now that's making this art form living, breathing, really dangerous? I hate the conversations about is jazz dead? You kidding me, man?
Right.
It is so vibrant, and I see it every day. And yes, we stand on the shoulders of greats, and we would be nowhere without them. But there's so much creativity and vitality. I feel really good about the future of this art form.
So take me back to your childhood. What were the seeds that were planted that eventually were harvested and evolved into you being an artist management and producing? How did this happen?
Absolutely. So I grew up in New York, right outside of the city, on the Queens border on Long Island. And my mom is from Havana, Cuba. My dad is a New York kid. And my Cuban family, they came to New York right after the Cuban Revolution in 61. And eventually settled in Queens. And my parents ended up they were neighborhood kids together. So they met as teenagers. So it goes way back. Um, but while neither of them were professional musicians or artists, they had a deep appreciation for the arts and for music. And the thing that I remember very early on was going to family parties in Queens at my grandparents' house. And they would have a DJ often, and they would be playing a lot of Latin music. So Cuban music, folks like Celia Cruz or Benny Moré, or, just like the salsa of the time, Mark Anthony, Gloria Estefan, Juan Luis Guerra. So that grounding. But then in school, I became a musician. I played sax and drums and was learning about. It's funny. My two first CDs were The Essential Charlie Parker and Bird and Diz,
Yeah.
and I was in fourth grade. And my dad got them for me because he thought, man, Eric's starting saxophone. What can I show him to give him a sense of what this instrument can sound like? And to his credit, man, he started me at the top. And I remember falling asleep with my Discman listening to those two CDs. And I look back now and think, wow, that was really unique for, an 8, 9-year-old to be falling asleep listening to Charlie Parker or Dizzy Gillespie. But I think consciously or subconsciously, even in my dreams as I was falling asleep listening to it, that music, that vocabulary just it filled all of me. And I was so excited by it. And then I started playing in band in school and just loved the feeling of being part of an ensemble. And then so you combine that school experience that I was having during the school day, and then you have my, nights or weekends with my family in the city listening to Latin music. And then I think just the mixture of the two. That's why I've worked a lot with artists in sort of the Latin jazz side of things, because it was the music I was playing, but it was also my heritage.
Yeah.
So I felt deeply drawn to it. So I started looking around for, well, who are the cats who are doing this today? And Paquito de Rivera was one of my heroes as a sax player, and Daphne Prieto, an artist who I work with today, was a hero of mine as a drummer. I actually interned at Jazz and Lincoln Center in college. And at the time, Arturo Farrell and the Afro-Latin Jazz Orchestra were the second resident big band next to Wynton's band. And I was so excited to check them out. And I felt such pride that there's this at Lincoln Center, this big band there. Um, but they were in residence for 5 years and then they left and they started their own nonprofit, the Afro-Latin Jazz Alliance, and today it's called Belongo. But the way that I met Arturo was that their very first show after Lincoln Center, they went to Symphony Space on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. So this was their new residency home, and they had programs that they gave to the audience, and then there was an audience response card that they had in each program that most people forget about. It falls on the floor. I actually filled out the survey, and then I flipped the card over and I wrote Arturo a note. And I said, hey, I'm Eric. I'm half Cuban. I interned at Jazz Lincoln Center when you all were there. I'm a musician. I'm in grad school studying arts management. So, fast forward to that time. If you need any help with your new nonprofit, let me know. And 10 months later, I heard from Arturo's wife. They had stumbled on my card in their kitchen. They were so mom and pop at the time that I think they lost track of those cards. But then they saw my note and they thought, oh my God, we we need to write this kid. So they invited me to their home and we started talking and we realized, man, we have so much work to do together. So it was really a glorified internship, but I started as Arturo's assistant director and started writing grants for him, producing their concerts at Symphony Space. I got to go to Cuba for the first time with him, uh, visited the house that my mom lived in as a child
Wow.
on that trip. Heavy, heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and anyway, I was still in school, so I couldn't start a full-time job with them, but I remember I had one semester left, and I wrote him and I said, "Hey, you should probably have a full-time staff member to support you day in, day out. What if I became your executive director?" And I look back on that note and I think, man, that was it took a lot of you know, courage maybe, or I don't know what, to write him and I was 24 at the time, to say, "Hey, you should hire me as the executive director of
Yeah.
your Grammy-winning nonprofit." And he said, to his credit, he said, "You're right. Let me speak with our board." They had a small board at the time. "Let's see if we can raise some money." And they applied for a couple of grants and they pieced together what was a humble starting salary for me. And that got me going. So in the summer of 2010, I began as their first executive director, first full-time staff member. And then it was off, we were off to the races. So uh, I was really thrown in the deep end early in my
Yeah.
career, and almost prematurely. I feel like I skipped some rungs in the ladder professionally, but the people who were around me, and I have so much, I thank them so much because they saw something in me. They saw, I think, a love for the music, a passion for the work, and a desire to help them build the realities and the visions that they wanted to create. So that just sort of, I know, I know we started somewhere very different, but
Yeah.
that got me going on this whole path, and then led to all sorts of interesting roles that I've had along the way.
So what was the first live show you saw, a live jazz show that absolutely blew you away?
Ooh, that is a great question. If I'm being honest, I came to jazz, like truly came to jazz, in at least attending live jazz in college.
Yeah.
So it was probably, well, I did see Herbie. Herbie Hancock came to Duke
Yeah.
my freshman year, and I sort of knew who Herbie was. I hadn't yet gone down the rabbit hole of all of his recordings, but there was a buzz on campus, and I got a ticket, and I remember seeing that show, and that was pretty awesome. That was pretty cool, and they were playing Headhunter stuff, and just it was a full journey through his catalog. Um, but probably when I was at Jazz and Lincoln Center as an intern, when I think as a perk, the interns, we got to go to Dizzy's Club for free. And I just remember seeing Paquito and seeing others at that time, and seeing, the Jazz Lincoln Center Orchestra and Wynton, um, and also, running into Wynton on the elevator and with Phil Shapp, and Phil started quizzing me on Charlie Parker. And I only realized later that he was one of the world's leading experts in Bird. But no, it was those concerts in college that really stuck with me. Now, sort of on the Latin side and on the Cuban side, I was fortunate to see the original Buena Vista Social Club
Yeah.
and see that band when all those elderly musicians were still around. So
Yeah.
in winter of 2020, I think it was, I got to see them at the Beacon Theater in New York City.
Yeah.
And that vibe, that feeling, I'll never forget that. We were sitting in the last row of the theater. I think those were the only tickets left.
Yeah.
And I was, because I had never really seen, sure, I'd been to family parties and listened to the recordings, but seen on stage a Cuban band, and for them to play that sort of music. And so, yeah, it was always these two, sometimes parallel paths, but often intersecting, where the jazz and the Latin were coming together and coming apart. And it was always a part of my journey. And I think because it was in my blood, it was in my family's blood. I just never strayed far from that side of the music.
The best show I've ever seen was Arturo Sandoval was here for a Charlie Parker week of celebration. I think it was before the pandemic. Man, it was the first time that I'd ever seen an encore because usually jazz shows, unless it's in a bigger place and it's more mainstream, it doesn't get that rowdy. But man, he was just talking to everybody. He was almost like a comedian ribbing on people in the front row in a good way, but he just got that place. So another thing I wanted to bring up too, you were on the elevator with that Charlie Parker mind. There's a radio host and a jazz historian in Kansas City, Chuck Haddock, and he's a
Mm.
steel trap. His mind is absolutely immaculate. He knows everything about Bird. And I remember one time we went to the Mutual Musicians Foundation, which is off 18 and Vine, and we were doing some radio spot, and he came up and we were talking, and the stuff that he knows is amazing. He was like, "Yeah, I remember in 1950 something, Bird walked up here with a bucket of chicken up to this part up here, and somebody came and he just had this whole thing. I mean, anytime I've talked to him, he has brought up absolutely completely unique Bird stories that I've never heard before. And whenever you run into a cat like that, it's like, wow, that's crazy, you know?
It's That's amazing. I love hearing examples like that. I mean, and we lost Phil Shep way too soon.
Yeah,
But what he did on KCR for so long, and championing Bird, I was a college kid in that elevator, and I all I knew was I was standing in front of the world's most famous jazz musician, and then this other guy was with him, and but the guy was really interested in quizzing me on Bird because I think Wynton asked me, "Hey man, like who are you? What department are you working in? What's your favorite? Do you play? And what's your favorite musician?" And I innocently said Charlie Parker, not knowing that Phil was so deep into Charlie Parker. So it became a running joke that semester. But he said to me, "All right, well, can you sing to me bars 36 through 52 of Yardbird Suite, the 1952 version on dial, or something like that, right?" And I remember being so embarrassed. I was put on the spot in front of Wynton. Um, but I think it was harmless. It was, yes, there's something in jazz culture, sort of this uh, nerding out and knowing every single recording and every single session. But I learned to appreciate where Phil was coming from, and also that he wanted me to better understand the artist that I said I called my favorite artist. And
yeah.
anyway, when we ran into each other in the hallway, I would sing something for him. I'd sing a few bars for him. So it became a nice friendship. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, what is your overall operating philosophy at EOP? When you take an artist in, when you any of the work you do, what's the overall operating mentality of how you treat the artist and take care of that, how you take care of yourself as an entrepreneur, and ultimately keep yourself on the front end of this evolving art form known as jazz?
Absolutely. Really, it starts with empathy. And I wish that word was not such a revolutionary concept, but in the music world and the arts world, it's so competitive, and everyone is vying for attention and for the record deal and the booking agent and the tours and you name it. And I think sometimes we lose just the understanding that these are artists who are creating a living, breathing thing. It requires a lifetime of dedication on their part. It requires vision. It requires a lot of vulnerability for them to do what they do. So the reason why I do this work and the reason why I work in the way that I do, to bring empathy, to bring trust, to bring uh, the utmost transparency to the way that I work, is that unfortunately it's not always held at a high premium in our business or our world. And it's not meant to throw shade or be disrespectful of anyone in any way, but it's just a reality that I think the business, there are aspects of it that can be really rough and unforgiving. And so when I sit down with an artist and we're considering working together, I think about a few things. First, um, do do I love their music? Do I love their art? Does it make the hair on my arm stand up? I want to be moved in that sort of way by the artists that I work with. And I've been really lucky. I've been really fortunate to work often with my heroes or to work with artists that I've collaborated with for years and years, and then we finally say, okay, let's work together. And but we've already built up a decade of trust or more.
Yeah.
So that's a special type of relationship. Not to say that I'm not in active conversation with new artists or artists that I don't know as deeply, but I'm trying to find just a shared mutual understanding of one another. It's a relationship built out of deep respect. Artist management is such a specific thing. You're a partner to an artist. You're helping them envision everything that they want to do professionally and artistically. You're helping them think through how to go about it, what's the strategy, just logistically, who to hire, who to put around them, how to build the team, how to sequence their projects, and perhaps most significantly, how to tell the story of who they are and what they do. Our world, and not just the arts, our world in general is driven by telling stories. And I know this is something you appreciate, given the work that you do. Um, we're trying to connect their artistry and their projects to the world. And it can be a little harder, especially if we're working with instrumental music. Okay, what are you saying here? What motivated you to create this project? Um, often with vocal driven projects, yeah, we can point to the lyrics or we can point to the words on the track. But with an art form like jazz and other performing art forms that I work with, dance, theater, and beyond, often you want to get to what is the what is at the core of what they're doing that maybe is not conveyed verbally. So that's actually where I start, whether I'm producing a record with an artist or I'm considering managing them. I ask them, well, tell me about your story. Um, in a way, I interview them and ask them to tell me about when they started out in music or in the arts and what motivated them, who their influences were. When did they realize they wanted to do this full time and make this a living? Um, and that process just naturally brings out so much from someone, and they can reveal so many beautiful nuggets about themselves and about the art that they want to create. So, uh, honestly, my process is pretty simple. It's what is unique about what you want to do. You've already proven in a way that you you're doing it already or that you can do it. You want to reach a bigger audience. You want a collaborator. I'm not in the business of babysitting. There'll be no surprise to anyone out there. I really see myself as a true partner to artists who want to have a team member working with them day in, day out, and also someone who's going to help them in the long run just sort of navigate their careers. So, um, yeah, I think that's the philosophy. And then the way that I try and take care of myself, that's a work in progress. Uh, uh, Trying to bring the same sort of care and empathy that I try to bring to my artists to myself. And I'm grateful to my family and my community, my wife, who have encouraged me to take this leap because I think they see how much it means to me and they see how much good work can be accomplished through it. But also, we know that the entrepreneurial road is not an easy one generally. So, yeah, that will be a learning experience for me in the coming months and year.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Hmm. I am honest. I have deep integrity. Um, I'm very passionate about the work and about the art. I'm a fan as well. I love music. I love the arts. I love what they do for people, for our culture. There's a reason why we remember the culture and the art that was created millennia ago. because it is an amazing artifact of what people did and how they felt and what was important to them. And that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Civilizations are built, they come and go, but the art somehow sticks around.
Yep.
The music sticks around. And even in, tough political moments like today, the fact that the arts and music are still significant and mean a lot to politicians too. That's interesting. That's a really interesting question to me.
Yeah.
So, um, I'm a firm believer in the capacity of the arts to change lives.
Yeah.
I don't take that lightly. So, um, yeah, but for me, honestly, the way that I work and the career that I've built is just being me,
Yeah.
being the kid who fell asleep listening to Bird and Diz, who loved playing sax and drums, who's super proud of his Cuban culture, who is just trying to find a path that could enable me to bring all of myself. And really the reason why I started my company is that I've had wonderful stops along the way in my career professionally. But each gig sort of I needed to wear one hat, but not all of them. And I
Yeah.
could never fully be all of myself. And EOP allows me to do that. It is the container for the things that I love to do, whether it's collaborating with artists, producing beautiful art, supporting the strategy and the visions of artists and organizations, and then teaching. So passing this on, passing arts management on, building a new generation of arts leaders. I feel really grateful, and there may be a lot of risk that I'm taking on right now, but at the same time, I feel very encouraged and committed. And if I'm speaking honestly, I have more energy now, despite having a toddler at home. I have more energy now than I've probably ever had in my life.
That's wonderful. So if anyone wants to reach out, they have questions, any of the good business, where's the best place for them to go?
Yep. My website, ericoberstein.com. I'm also on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, you name it. But yes, heading to the website, you can reach all those spots.
Right on. Eric, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your
Hey,
story.
Joe.
Best of luck with the company, man.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on, and
You bet.
thank you for all that you do.
Yeah,
Hey,
absolutely.
jazz fans, Joe Domino here, the host of the weekly Neon Jazz radio show and regular interview series being produced and distributed from Lee Summit, Missouri. We are very excited to let you know about the second annual Lee Summit Jazz Festival taking place again this summer on June 28th at the Bridge Space, located at 210 Southwest Market Street in downtown Lee Summit. Following the success of the 2024 festival, the lineup will include Lee Summit students, Casey Area Youth Jazz, Paganova with Michael Pagan, Horoscope with Stan Kessler, Brad Gregory, Adam Larson, and the Lee Summit Jazz Orchestra. There will also be food trucks and vendors to round out a day of celebration. Early bird tickets are 2 for $30, and all details can be found at lsjazzfest.com. We can't wait to see you there.